You're listening to SaskScapes, a podcast featuring the stories of arts, culture, and heritage in Saskatchewan. I've decided to title today's podcast Architecture. It's a word one of my guests happened upon when describing his work. Well, we liked it so much we decided it should be a real word. I'm Kevin Power, and once again I am in Moose Jaw, and my guests are Canadian potter Rob Froese and his partner, photographer Gabriela Garcia-Luna. Yet again, another gratifying conversation, and once again with new friends who felt like old friends. Enjoy the podcast. So we're here in the Moose Jaw Cultural Center on the second floor where we encountered the studios of potter Rob Froese and photographer Gabriela Garcia-Luna.
Good pronunciation.
Thank you. I worked hard on that.
You
Rob, I had a long conversation with your father this morning, which will be a podcast in and of itself. So I already know a lot about you, but I'll give you a chance to represent yourself. So you were born in Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm.
Where?
Saskatoon.
Aha.
Yes. But I wasn't there long. I returned years later, but grew up first in a little town, Hanley, and then the rest of the growing up until today is in Moose Jaw,
right,
with a lot of years out of Moose Jaw after high school traveling the world.
Right.
Now I'm back here.
How long have you been back in Moose Jaw?
10 years. Moved back from Japan after years in Japan, and but I still make trips to Japan every year for a few months. So it's still something big part of my life.
We'll get to that big part. And Gabriela, I'm guessing you're not from Saskatchewan.
Yes, I am originally from Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Mexico City until 2006 that I left Mexico City to go some other places. And then being in Moose Jaw in 2009.
How did you find your way from Mexico City to Moose Jaw? I'm sure you weren't sitting back living in Mexico City thinking, I gotta get myself to Moose Jaw some point.
No, I didn't even know it.
I'm not surprised.
You picked a spot directly north.
Right.
Directly north.
Right.
Yes. Well, it's a beautiful story for myself.
Yeah.
But it's a story about artwork, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
I came first time to Canada, to the Banff Center, doing some artwork in a residency that lasted 7 weeks or 8 weeks.
One of my former homes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And you know how it is, sometimes life is before a place and after a place. And Banff for me was like that. Before that residency, there was a story. After that residency, 2003, there was a different story, a lot of transformation, and that's where I met Rob.
Right. So, Rob, you were also at the Banff Center.
Yes, I had taken a summer away from Japan to do something. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew the place well enough that I felt good in Banff. I'd worked there before.
It's a very good place to find
itself.
It is. And direction.
Yeah. Well, things, it was a transformative time. I worked with Gabriela on a project. Met a lot of other great people too. And went back to Japan after that. And then a year or so later, we reconnected.
Both back at the Banff Center again?
No, in Mexico this time. So I made my way to Mexico after And that was a realization. I knew nothing about Mexico. I knew nothing, really.
You knew Gabriela was there.
Yes.
That may have been enough to get you there.
Yes, that's
right.
Absolutely true. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But before the Banff Center, where had you... Well, I want to get even before you studied. I asked your dad the same question, and I'll ask you both. Can you recall the earliest memories that you have of something that you took in, a piece of artwork that you took in, or somebody else's artwork that you had seen, maybe your dad's, that made that initial created that initial spark in you to say, I want to do something. I want to make something. I want to be an artist.
No, I can't think of one particular thing. It's just this many thousands of, I think, so many types of experiences. It has a lot to do with being shown art as a child. The Mendel Art Gallery, lots of trips there. And then the environment in my home, where it included so many types of examples of types of art. Conversation was often around it.
You'd marinated in that environment, I'm sure.
And the decision to say become a ceramic artist, that wasn't really a firm decision that I'm going to set out to do this. This was an emergent experience that just happened in a way.
Where did you begin? Using what?
It's all mixed up for me now, but I made things using materials, just hands and materials from early age. Realization that I guess from drawing classes, I enrolled in drawing classes in university, and then eventually moved towards other material like clay and printmaking and painting, and all of that just working its way together. I guess it's in my personality. I've never been a good decision maker.
Right.
It's always something that I move towards something and eventually bump into it,
Right.
And that's kind of how it worked. It still works, really. My work in clay right now is it's about finding out more. I feel like I'm a beginner. And
that's a very good headspace to always be in, I find.
Good.
Never getting to that place where you think, there, I've learned. I've arrived. It's never safe to arrive.
No.
And Gabriela, can you talk about your early influences growing up in Mexico as far as informing your art?
Yes, Mexico itself Mexico City itself, it's a very interesting city, diverse city, and colorful and multicultural. Mexico itself is so vast in that sense. My dad always liked traveling a lot. He took us all over the country, and we always were going to museums, and we always listened to music, and I remember going to museums. I think that's probably the most important experience in terms of art for me, going to museums, from archaeological museums or natural history or art museums, or just activities outside of a museum, like a park, drawing or whatever, I still have a really, really fond memory of going into these beautiful spaces, with this marble floor and, this ambience and low light, and then the light pointing to a maquette of a city, a pre-Hispanic city, for example, Tenochtitlan, in the Archaeological Museum of Mexico City, or the Natural History Museum with all these windows. You see through something, whatever it is, or even if it's feathers, or it's an animal, or it's a maquette, or an explanation of something. It it's had a kind of an effect of magical effect on me, of coming to the space of a museum. For me, it was almost kind of a religious experience, I have to say.
Right.
And so I think going to museums was the most strong impact in understanding that there's something meaningful about the work that is presented there. About the words, about the objects, or about the paintings that is presented there, It's something relevant.
What do you think it is, both of you? What do you think it is about being young and that instinct to be able to observe, to care, to take things in? Not everybody has that. Not everybody. Artists see the world very differently than perhaps a lot of other people that don't live artistic lives as far as profession goes. What is it that is it just part of our genetic makeup that we move through the world in a very specific way, in which we're constantly seeing beauty in everything, and letting that seep in and somehow informing what we do? And how are you taught that? You pick it up by, clearly families play a huge part in exposing that.
And then the cultivation on your own part, there's a decision somewhere there to pay attention,
right,
and to look, and then maybe the realization that there's more there than you first saw. Then you can't go back after that. Then it's just a continual process of deepening your experience somehow.
Right.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, it has to be perhaps also, as a curiosity, a certain sense of curiosity. I feel it is for me, and it's not about, of course it was cultivated by the environment I grew up, but it's not only about that, because I have siblings and none of them are in the arts, for example, right? My dad was a doctor, my mom was a teacher, it's, there are artistic expressions of what they do, but not specifically, I think art, or people who's driven towards art making have specific curiosity in first the first thing, but also they have we have in this deep curiosity kind of a drive to transform things, right? To not just to know about them as a scientific mind, for example, that is happy knowing something, but also about transforming it and looking for something that is still not there.
Right.
Right? Not just about the facts. How are the facts? But what else that is still not there that is possible?
Yeah.
And I feel that's where the art starts to grow in someone. Right? Something like that.
It's often the most distasteful part of things that are the most interesting, that are the most beautiful, that are fascinating. That's almost where the story really is.
Yeah. Some aspect, some little hook somewhere.
Yeah.
To capture your attention. It might, like you say, it might be distasteful, but there's a question there.
Yeah. If you care to go there, if you care to try to answer that.
Yeah.
Did either of you get to a point early on where you questioned whether you could actually make a living from your art? Did you think, well, maybe I should learn something sensible just in case?
Something sensible? What do you mean?
Yes, sensible is purely subjective. Yes. Something perceived as safe career-wise. For example, did you think, well, maybe I should go into medicine because that's solid?
Well, yeah. I had an experience. I think I'm doing it backwards, and thankfully, because I first, found myself being a potter as a profession in Japan, where it's an accepted profession and you don't have to say it twice. People know what that is and what that involves, and
Right.
it's in terms of selling your work, it's not a problem at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you make good work, it will find a home.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed that for almost 8 years, that way of working, of 4 or 5 exhibitions in a year, with everyone being a new body of work. Like, really, I was encouraged to come to innovate, right? So it was always fresh and new, and made enough money always to keep going.
Right.
And things have changed a bit. Coming back to Canada, it's a different culture, environment, and it's got to say it's tougher.
Because we don't view it as a...
I don't know. Well, it's connected to what I make, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
I'm making pots a lot of the time that are a hybrid of 2 different cultures, really, and I can't really expect those pieces to just disappear. But for my studio. But in terms of making a living at it, it's a little harder now.
Right.
But I've been, the experience of what it was in Japan, that's with me all the time, and I would never not go to the studio to make work.
So
I can't see quitting.
You've spoken about Japan so much, we must talk about how you got the journey to Japan for you. What got you there in the first place?
General travel, roaming, in Asia and Europe, and backpacking in the 80s.
Right.
And that led to return trips to Japan. And then each time back, I had a little bit more interest in ceramic arts, and that eventually turned into work in Japan. Just
was that interest in ceramic arts? Was that what do I want to say? How much of Japan influenced your decision to say, yeah, that really is the direction I want to go in?
Not all of it. I'd had good experiences with study experiences in Canada with excellent artists here, teachers who really helped me choose a direction. But that it kind of coalesced in Japan.
Right.
Yeah. And then by making the work that I felt compelled to make, it found a home in galleries there and to be popular, and I had to make what I wanted to make, and
what do you
gradually
find?
Influences, Japanese, the aesthetics of the table, of tableware, that has heavily influenced my work.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you, what about Japanese culture has had such a pull for you?
It's a refined society that appreciates detail. Not that others don't, but they appreciate it in a way that really rings true with me, resonates. It's it's like they're looking at pots with X-ray vision, and this special kind of vision of seeing deeply into something, and there's so much of that. You see so much of that, and you experience it so often that you start to see those things.
Your work is appreciated on the same level
as the making of it.
As making it.
Yeah. And that's here as well.
Yeah.
It's just that there's more of it in Japan. The experience is there so much.
Do you find the same to be true for photography, Gabriela? Do we as Canadians appreciate photography as much as your experiences elsewhere in the world? Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
I don't really know. I think I don't really know how to answer that. If I cannot make a differentiation between nationalities or environments, probably because the way I was working in Mexico after coming to Canada, many things changed. So I cannot carry a comparison, perhaps. Also, there are different stages of my career,
Right.
different stages of my development as an artist. I felt like when coming in Canada, interesting enough, coming to Musja, small city, compared to Mexico City, it's just a neighborhood, basically.
Yeah.
But I felt that there was so much to do here. There were so many possibilities, to do here. That was something that helped me to expand, in a way, my own practice, and the quietness of a small place and the influence of the land here in Canada in general,
Right.
Resonate a lot with my own work. So my work is, in a way, a bit quiet. Not really quiet, but it is more about contemplation, less of a narrative, less directly political or a low or high volume, And in Mexico, the circumstances are such that the work that resonates more is a more striking work. It's more punching and more loud,
So it's very much influenced by the environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I'm not saying just my work. I'm saying the work there. In general, the work there. Yes. And so
the work reflects the energy of the.
Yes, but what I mean is my work has always been in the concern of an introspective view since I was in Mexico. So being in Mexico, I was a little bit displaced, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Right.
My work, I show my work and my work was appreciated. But I always felt that it was a little too, the rest was a little bit too loud,
Do you find that both? It's such a solitary way of life, creating art, yet it's probably your most meditative space is your studio, I would think. Is it hard to imagine working in an environment with a lot of people? Like, does that seem like an overwhelming prospect? You need to have that solitude?
I like to be in cities. I like working in quiet, but I like working and especially like working with other artists. So residencies are to me they're wonderful things. Desirable situations where you're working with others who are as serious about the work as you are. But I'm thinking of my first experience in Japan. I was in a deserted barn that I was basically given to use, but the city had grown around it, so I could work in solitude in the day and then go downtown at night, cycle downtown, and it was a very nice balance for me. Now when I go to Japan, I'm in the country, alone in the country, and with a long trip to any city, so that's changed the way I work, and I'm finding from the comparison that I do like to be in a mix. I can imagine working in Mexico City. That would be great.
A whole other
gritty, beautiful place.
Yeah.
With all that. It's vibrant. Oh, it's just
And a lot of
wonderful.
clay.
Yeah, lots of clay culture. And I'm discovering how closely they look at clay too. They're just looking at it in a different way. Like you mentioned the word you use? Like a quality of the work that's been produced in Mexico. What word did you use? Can we rewind it?
When? We were talking a lot lately, the last few years.
Just now. But it's a different aesthetic, right? But it's still a deep sense of material, of the details of material. Right. So I'm enjoying trips to Mexico too, to work in clay. It's in Moose Jaw here. It's kind of an in-between situation, working in solitude in this beautiful space. The cleanest studio I've ever worked in. The environment, with the carpeting outside, and I have to work in a clean way so that affects what I'm making. Of course. Oh, right. You have to just kind of keep it tidy. So, what do you think?
I think it's a mix for me. It's a mixed situation in a way. I certainly appreciate being in solitude, and I sometimes look for more, and I find more. I can find more silence than in my studio, for sure, and I look for it. But at the same time, I always feel very excited to see the work of others, to have the chance to watch, interesting filmmakers or interesting, actors or musicians or other visual artists. So that's what a city or a big center offers. Bigger communities, more diversity. Of course, it's great. We often drive to Regina to the openings and things like, for us is necessary, to have a discussion of your artwork or a discussion of the artwork of others, or just, this interchange is so necessary, to feed your own practice and to feel inspired by the way others do their work. So it's something that has to be balanced.
So then I would ask you, what about Rob's work inspires you?
I feel very fortunate, to have Rob as partner, and to have Rob as an artistic partner too. He certainly inspires my work a lot. And I really feel inspired by the work, by the way he is clear about his work. He knows, he roams around for a while, and kind of until he's there. And when he's there, when he starts putting his hands on whatever sculpture or vase or whatever, just goes for it. And he doesn't even think about it. He knows. It's not about, I think I want to do things. It's like he knows what he wants to do and just do it. And that's something that is so amazing and so inspiring. He knows what he's looking for.
And is your approach more methodical? Do you need to know where you're going before you start?
Not really. In a way, we are very similar in the way we approach the work. We are open to what is happening. We like proposing accidents. We are like proposing directions and then being open. Really, we are waiting for things to merge in our process, not just being the directors of our artwork. Right.
Right.
We both have that. I don't know. It's like it's probably the way the fact that you see it in front of you, and just across the corridor, going to the studio. Sometimes we have to close our doors, honestly, because we need to stop communicating, right? In order to concentrate more on what we are doing. But certainly, it's very inspiring to see, to share those aspects of the work.
Is there a familiarity for you with material that Rob uses with the clay? I mean, I don't know why I associate clay so strongly with Mexico. Even just the terracotta color of clay, and it's just so defined in Mexico.
Yes, I think so. I think there is so much ceramic art and craft in Mexico. So much. I grew up going to pre-Hispanic town, Teotihuacan, very close to Mexico City, really close, less than an hour drive. And we used to go there, walk around the ruins, walk around the pyramids. And before this place was preserved properly by the anthropology ministry in Mexico. And you were able to walk all over and to pick up whatever you wanted. And we could find these little pieces of clay sometimes. And it was fascinating thinking, wow, this little piece of clay has been here for how many years? Who knows, right? Or, points of obsidian points that we could find. So I grew up with that. I grew up going, as I said, to these museums and looking to the vases made of clay. So clay is something very, very familiar in Mexico. And also, you usually drink atole, a hot drink made of corn or rice, or brevet, in these jarritos, which is, a low temperature clay cup in a specific shape, There's so much of, tradition of the pottery of Michoacan or the pottery of Chihuahua, So Europe is something that is very familiar in a way, I don't know, in terms of the way I came to know clay through Rob's work and others' work, but kind of that was for me a new portal to know and have reflections about clay work in a different way, in a more, it's just another universe, right? Another universe.
Rob, what about Gabriela's work?
Well, in terms of art making, seeing her work, for me, it's like it's been a repeated experience of being able to see a little bit more about something. See how you're kind of like a visual, like an archaeologist or something, like pulling away layers of things, Is that a word?
Did you say
archaeologist?
That's what I thought. I heard you say. I think it should be a word.
I made that up.
I think that should be a word.
Well, let's start using it.
Yeah, sure.
That will be the title of this podcast. Archaeology.
That's what it is.
You pull away layers. You look at things, and then I'm just amazed at how you can see more. Always, there's another layer there. There's another facet or an angle. If you move around something emerges, and watch your body of work change. The bodies of work that you've been making over the last few years. It's beautiful. It's like it inspires me in my work too. It's to start to look. It's like getting the glasses cleaned.
Wow, what a great way to describe
That's very
it.
beautiful to say.
Oh, that's big.
There's quite an energy between the two of you, I have to say.
We should live in our studios.
It's palpable. No, I mean, I can see why you're drawn to each other, both artistically and otherwise. It's very strong.
Isn't that good? Yeah,
Yeah,
to
I
see that
think
from
so.
somebody else's work.
Oh,
A sharing and
I had a very interesting, long, controversial discussion with 6-7 artists last weekend in Saskatoon. The catalyst was a very controversial piece that went up in Saskatoon as a public display. It was compressed 2 bales of compressed recycled material. What would you say to the average person who's trying to find art appreciation in something that's not so clear. Your dad's work is very clear. You don't have to work hard to understand at first glance your dad's work. You don't. For me, you wouldn't have to work apart. I mean, on a surface level, of course. Then you go deeper into the linear aspect of viewing a ceramic pot. But at first glance, for the layperson, they go, "Aha! I get that. That's a pot." How do you educate somebody to understand work that isn't so clear?
It's a hard one.
It's a question of life, really. About everything we face in society. I mean, it's the same. It's like everyone has a willingness to, about curiosity. Really, are you curious about possibilities, like abstract art, non-representational works that really require you to look.
You have to want to go there.
Yeah, you have to learn to see. It's a different way of seeing, and right. In my opinion, it's a deeper way of seeing, and it deepens your being.
Is there artwork that you experience that just does not speak to you at all? Do you say, well, I question the validity of that altogether? Or do you give, as artists, everybody's work the respect due?
Not all the work resonates with you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. I mean, because a lot of the work you are seeing it from your own perspective, and or it's displayed in a certain way. I don't know, for whatever reason. Not all the work will resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly think many things that I've seen around or in different disciplines, I would say, well, they should save the space for something else. I guess sometimes but it's not just necessarily about what you like, because I think that the very superficial view of art is something that first of all has to be decorative, mm-hmm. And this is what first thing, that people has to be educated, that it's not about decoration. I'm very surprised, for example, to say that art is not linked to education as it really is. Art is more about education than about entertainment,
mm-hmm.
in my opinion. And
well, that's big.
Yes, yeah. And unfortunately, it's not seen like that, or it's not established like that in our organizations. So, how do you say this is a valid piece of art and it's not decorative? How do you say that when you're saying it has to entertain you? There's a contradiction.
Right. So then, are you saying that? But you still feel there is a place for education. For art education in the school
there is
system.
A place. Right. There is a place for art and education in the school system, but there's also a place for art that is not necessarily decorative or doesn't necessarily appeal to everyone's taste.
Right.
The function of art is not just to decorate, right?
Right.
The function of art is way larger. Is to create all kinds of questions.
So, do you teach a student how to experience? Then is that what?
Do you teach what?
Do you teach how to experience art? Is that?
I don't think you can teach how to experience art.
Right.
You can expose people. First of all, it's important to expose people to different kinds of work. And to create spaces where these people can see it. That's the role of, like this, the Museum Cultural Center, the Museum and Art Gallery, that they also do great, the educational programs, etc. What you're doing, podcasts, or in the now the different ways we have to communicate, First of all, it's like, okay, having the possibility to visit those places and to see something in a different way, that it was from the past, so to speak, you know. And you cannot, I don't think you can teach how to experience art. You can offer the opportunity, and you can give education about background. You can give education about how this piece was made, on how what was the motivation of this artist, like validate the practice itself. If it's appealing to your aesthetic, if you would buy it or collect it or not, or is not to be collected, you know, is secondary. Just the view of a decorative piece that is in the mind, in the back of the mind of most population is strong.
Right.
You know, and that's probably the first thing to reverse, you know. Educating is to offer, you know, the possibility to see it, to view it.
And I think it's also really important to develop a language for how something makes you feel. And I was saying, I interviewed Jean Freeman, author Jean Freeman, and I was sharing with her experience of my grade 4 teacher, who said for the entire year, you're not allowed to use the verb like when you describe something. It's so limiting. I want to hear everything else but like. I don't want to hear I like this. I want to hear how it makes you feel. And giving somebody the opportunity to give language to, even if the language, I think, is it disgusts me, at least you're going somewhere, yeah?
In the case of a public art piece that causes somebody to, you know, recoil, well, not recoil, but to throw a tarp over it.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. Like, it's not harming, it's just opening up a question. And if it means challenging thing, though.
No, but isn't it in a way? Isn't it a good thing? I mean, I'm not saying about the kind of itself of denying this exists, but it you know, observing the fact that it's causing an effect, and it's certainly moving some fibers there. Might be something to observe. I don't really know.
Well, I think it would be most alarming if for an artist, if it didn't do that to somebody, if it didn't move some fiber of a viewer's being.
Yeah.
And I actually had said at the time, I said it when we shut the recorder off, I said, you know what I find most interesting is that the citizen who covered the piece up with tarp had no idea that in the action of doing that, he created another piece of art.
Yes.
You know, which to me is a statement of not wanting to look at not wanting to take recycled material and just look away. If I don't look at it, then we don't have a problem here. And that kind of personality doesn't go there. And so I think we came to the conclusion that you can't teach going there. You can lead somebody there, but there has to be a willingness on behalf of the viewer to want to go deep.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
So do you fear that funding for new work, do you feel safe in the medium that you've chosen, that there'll always be funding for your work versus somebody who would put a bale of compressed material together? Like, you feel
I don't think about that.
You don't.
In that way that there's any kind of a competition for funding or anything like that. It's like support is support.
I don't know if there will be enough funding. I don't think there's enough funding anyway.
Ever, no matter what.
I mean, it's not matter what it's like the fact. I mean, I've been fortunate to receive funding, you know, and support for my work. I wouldn't be here doing artwork or teaching or organizing events for the community. I wouldn't be doing any of this if it was not for the support I received from the very beginning of my art practice, you know. As I said, I came to Canada, to the Banff Center, and it was thanks to a grant. FONCA, you know, Fondo Nacional para la Cultura y las Artes, Mexican Fund for Arts and Culture, you know, gave me a grant to come to Canada to make an artist in residency for 7 weeks. And they knew they know that it's important for an artist, and it was important for me in so many ways. And I wouldn't have continued doing artwork if it was not for that funding or another funding and another funding,
Right.
And here in Canada, I've also received, grants or residencies from the Saskatchewan Arts Board. And otherwise, you cannot continue, or well, yes, you continue because in a way, it's what you chose to do, or because you have enough loving for what you do that you will continue. But it certainly makes it possible and makes expanding your work is absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary in a way. But at the same time, I have to say that there's never enough, because there is so much to explore for each one of the artists that are in the community. Not everyone gets a grant, or not every time you apply for a grant, right? So in a way, there's never enough enough support.
No, there never will be.
There never will be, And at the same time, well, great that it's there, And part of what we have to educate is not only about how to look at art or how to approach art, but also how to value, not, as I was mentioning, not only as for the object itself, but for what brings to a community, what brings to people, reflections and questionings and creativity and invention and ways to relate in a better way, in creative ways to actualize ourselves in the time we are living, and not just with images of our past.
What's coming up for you both next? I know that I get the sense that neither of you sit down and sketch out a master 5-year plan in advance. But obviously, Japan's going to continue for you.
Yeah, that will, as long as I can do that in the fall for a few months, and that might extend to longer periods. More work here. An exhibition in the Cultural Center here in June and July. Ongoing digging around, finding out, and I'm taking a class this summer in mold making.
Oh, wow.
Like ceramic
Where?
ways in Medicine Hat, in the Delta. I'm a well-known mold maker in Vancouver. I'm excited about that. I get to, revisit techniques I supposedly learned in university, 20 years ago.
Right.
It's time to go back to that.
Yeah.
And you're having some shows. The show.
Here?
In the culture? Yeah, that's coming up in June, July.
And you have a fabulous program here where members of the public get to come in and actually watch you create in real time.
Yeah.
What does that feel like? Is it intimidating to have somebody looking on as you create, or does it actually give you an energy?
Well, you work in a different way.
Yeah.
I've discovered. I've participated twice. The second annual Artist in Action event. It's in a weird way. It's you're making your work, but you're not making it as you would normally. It's like this other experience of being watched, but at the same time you're instructing, but not really instructing. So to me, I found the exciting part of it for me was that artists get to find out something about themselves in the process of presenting.
Sure. And
the public too gets to see production in a different way. So it's like this new area that no one really thinks about too much. Like, you don't think of yourself as performing your art,
right.
Visual artist performing, but that's happening, and I think I like it because it's, in a way, it's a little challenging for everybody.
Well, you can witness an audience's reaction to your piece after the fact, but to experience it in real time gives you an opportunity to experience something that you otherwise wouldn't by being influenced by the people around you, much like an actor is influenced by an audience.
Yes, because
and they don't realize, audiences have no idea how much of a part they play in a performance. So I wonder if the people watching you create realize how much of an impact they have in that moment.
As a process piece.
Yeah. As
These
if to
are not
say,
finished pieces. It's about the process of making.
are they not finished pieces by the end? Are they?
Some were any? Not.
No, not really.
A painter might have finished a painting.
Yes.
But they revisited it later, I'm sure. But it was more about this little section of the activity, like this section of time in the studio.
Yes, what we've been doing since last year here at the Cultural Center through the invitation of the Cultural Center itself was to do some activities in relation to visual arts. Since the theater, the performing arts are already running for several years, but the visual arts we have studios here, but the visual arts haven't been as active. So they wanted to reactivate that or to start it. So the activities that we've been organizing are related first to the spaces that we have in the Cultural Center available, studios and rooms, whatever, to the artists that we have in the community. And some are professional artists or some are in a stage of mid-career, or some are emerging artists, but with serious intentions in terms of their artwork, right? And we decided to bring out these programs where we invite the public to come and watch the artists making their work for a period of time of 4 hours in all the spaces of the Cultural Center. So it's like taking, as Rob says, it's like taking a section of a studio practice and opening the window for everybody come and visit. So the experience is really strange for a visual artist, as you say.
Sure.
We're not used to have public, right? So it puts you in a little bit weird environment, But at the same time, you start to feel, you have the feedback of the people in that moment, And for the people, it gives them the opportunity to reflect about the process of art making. Another thing that happens with the artist is that sometimes it gives you the pretext to put something together. A little bit of pressure is always good,
Sure.
And then, if you have to think what to do for this period of time, you have to put something together. And it has happened that after the event, the artists that participated, they continued with that same input in the same direction, doing more work or connecting to other community or making another presentation, and it's reactivating the whole activity between the members of the community.
That's interesting.
So it's kind of a humble way to do it, but we have been observing the results are really, really great, not only because people come and we have lots of people visiting the Cultural Center, but what happens after,
It's a great project, great idea for people, small communities where there are artists living that are looking for something to do for Culture Days weekend at the end of September. It's very portable. Maybe you'll be groundbreaking that way. Other communities will pick up on it.
When we were coming up with some name for it, Artists in Action, I discovered that there are many places in the world that have that very title. In England and New Zealand, and
it's hard to be original when it comes to that. Somebody's got it. Yeah.
Artist in Action. There's 3 words, not in action.
Right.
To make sure.
You were asking what were our plans in the future too. I'm just coming back to that. Is I am preparing. See a lot of little prints all over.
Yes.
I'm preparing a show for in September, at the Musha Museum and Art Gallery. And the Musha Museum and Art Gallery is a beautiful space. It's a very big space. There are going to be 2 solo shows at the same time. Usually they split the space in 2, and they have two shows opening. And so I'm going to be presenting some of the work that you see here. So I'm just sorting out and preparing for enlarging and framing and all these things. For me, it's a super interesting event, showing my work in a beautiful gallery that is so great directed.
Blue is very dominant in your work. I can't help but notice that.
Wow, you're so observant. Yeah. Yes, you are. You're very observant. Yeah.
It's because I'm drawn to that color so much that I instantly noticed it when I came in. It is, I have to say, it's quite staggering to take your work in and remind oneself that it's actually photography. It has such texture and movement to it. It almost wants to be an art form of material. It almost it's hard to imagine that it's a photograph. In much the same way that some paintings are hard to imagine that they're not photographs. It really is quite staggering. Your use of light is amazing.
I think more and more I understand about my work, and few of the things that you have said, the color, the blue, that is related to studies of light that I've been doing the last years, and basically the strong influence came in Canada when I was 2008 residency at Emma Lake for 10 days. We had a shared residency. At
Following in Dad's footsteps?
Yeah, I'd heard about it all growing up. Dad being there and my mother as well when they were young.
Yeah, so we were in Emma Lake. We had a 10 days residency there, and we supposed to do a collaborative project. And we had an idea of what we were going to do together. We were going to project images that I was going to create on pieces of white clay that we were going to be hanging on the forest, whatever. Well, it didn't happen like that.
I think mosquitoes, the population of mosquitoes had something to do with it. I had to do this at night, hanging in the trees.
And also our temper to do our own thing, we have that, as much as we share so much, we end doing different things and going to different places. So Rob started working with the shards that, still is work that is evolving. And I started taking photographs at night and realizing this glow in the night that was so unusual, and say, wow, this is 10 p.m. and what's the glow on the sky? What's that? It was foreign to me, honestly.
Well, you're in Mecca as far as Saskatchewan and skies are concerned.
Yes.
When I was driving down here, I was looking at the sky and I was thinking, this is art in motion. It's continually changing. It's never the same piece.
Yes.
Yeah, it's never the same piece.
I was coming from Mexico, and the sun sets and sets by, light by, we don't have this intermediate light that lasts for hours and hours and hours at night,
Right.
At 10 p.m., no matter where you are, it's dark, So, so this glow, I realized, that's the sun. Great revelation, huh? It's like somebody first time you saw snow, or the first time you saw the ocean, after 20 years or something.
Yeah.
For me, it was a great revelation. So that really struck on my work, and so I started exploring more the possibilities of that light and intervention of the space, and it, just permeated in so much of my work. The blue light on the Saskatchewan sky at 10 p.m. Beautiful. Interesting. I'm so interested about these effects of light, and I find almost terrifying to go to a place that is night all time.
Right. Yeah.
It's terrifying enough to be attractive.
Although there would be a quality of light if on a full moon. That's one of those favorite lights in perpetual darkness.
Wow. That's,
Well, past midnight at Emma Lake, you had your camera set up on the dock, shooting to the northwest, and your camera picked up something that we couldn't see.
Yes.
Light that was there that we're not seeing.
Yes.
So you could work in the dark.
Oh, yes.
That would be a
yes.
good project.
Yes, would be certainly, part of what what I'm doing is related to the possibility of capturing very minimum amount of light, and now camera can do.
No camera can replicate that. One of the gifts of nature.
Yes.
That cannot be replicated.
No, but I don't think it's about replicating.
Well, you mean digital cameras can register more light than...
I see. I see
Register.
what you mean.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
But I mean, to try to recreate that in a controlled environment, try to capture that kind of light, but with the use of your own lighting, I would think would be next to impossible because it doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yes.
You could come close to it, but you would...
Yes, no, I think no, it's just totally impossible. I mean, what happens is that a moment, a view in the land is not only about the way it's seen, It's not about the qualities of light or how would you say, the lumens.
Yeah,
so the measure, if the experience is so much about the experience of being in a place, in a moment that is so special. And of course, you cannot even try to replicate it, first of all. And the second is, you photograph, you cannot pretend to represent it.
No, it can only inform and inspire.
That's the only thing, know.
This has been an incredibly self-indulgent conversation. I'd like to thank you mostly for the fact that in defining your approach to your work, you've already contributed to a facility for language. Right. Thank you for letting me in on a little snapshot of your life.
Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for listening. The SaskScapes podcast is created by Kevin Power as part of the Culture Days Animateur program operated by Sask Culture. Funding to the cultural sector is provided through the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sports, Culture and Recreation. If you want to hear more of these podcasts, or to see the great work being done by other Sask Culture animateurs, please visit www.iheartculture.ca. Special thanks to Paved Arts in Saskatoon for their technical support. Music for SaskScapes is provided by Saskatchewan-born singer-songwriter Jeffrey Straker. There is no end to the stories to be told. So, until next time,